November has already passed and Christmas is rapidly approaching. November tends to be a pretty busy time of year. It's what I'd refer to as Oscar season, when all the movies with big ambitions are starting to be released. The first film I watched was the Oscariest of Oscar movies, and that being the new Martin McDonagh film, The Banshees of Inishearn. What a joyfully miserable movie. Here is a film that manages to make you laugh and feel kind of bummed out at the same time, which is a good thing. Banshees of Innishearn is a bleak comedy about two friends, one of which decides he no longer wants to be affiliated with the other. It's a story about codependency that's told like a tragic fable. It has a lot to say about human nature in a way that's not bluntly spelling it out for you. Banshees of Innishearn is simple in its plot, but that simplicity is a large part of the appeal. What really carries this movie is the characters themselves and the great performances given by their actors. I don't have much more to say about this one other than I found it to be immensely enjoyable, and I imagine most people would find something to admire about it. A definite thumbs up. The next movie I watched was easily another Oscar contender. I'm talking about the free Roku original, Weird, the Al Yankovic story. A profound film that tells the 100% true story of Weird Al Yankovic and his rise to stardom. This movie is very funny in a way that a lot of comedies aren't nowadays. It's filled with absurdist humor, but knows when to hold back. Weird is every cliche in the book, but in a way that's incredibly self-aware. It's like a textbook example of how to structure these celebrity success story films. It's often bad on purpose, but it made me laugh a lot, and in my book, that means a successful comedy. It reminded me of UHF, which is high praise. It's the type of film I would love to watch again and again. And I'm giving it a thumbs up. Plus, it's free. You can't go wrong with free. The next movie I watched was a new Netflix film from Cartoon Saloon, My Father's Dragon. This film is from director Nora Twomey, who also directed their film The Breadwinner. My Father's Dragon has a familiar feel to the studio's other films. It's very fast-paced, and the characters are all very geometrical in their designs made up of simple shapes. While most of Cartoon Saloon's movies feel geared towards both kids and adults, this is the first one that feels mainly geared towards children, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I will admit it did hinder some of my enjoyment. I felt the events of the fantasy world the main character travels to didn't really complement the struggles of his everyday life. Perhaps I just missed the point entirely, but I couldn't help but feel that something thematically speaking was missing. I think kids will enjoy this movie, and adults will likely enjoy the beautiful animation, but this is definitely one of Cartoon Saloon's lesser films. I'll give it a thumbs up, but one on the lower end for the adults that may not be as into it. The next movie I watched was one I have been waiting a very long time for, and that being Guillermo del Toro's stop-motion take on Pinocchio. Here is a film that is extremely del Toro. You'd think Pinocchio is a story we're all too familiar with. I mean, we just had the Robert Zemeckis remake a few months ago, but Del Toro very much manages to make this his own thing, setting it in 1930s fascist Italy, which plays heavily into it, and tweaking around the plot to make everything feel more tightly connected. This movie certainly surprised me with how unhinged it is. It really feels like an uncompromised creative vision, which can be both good and bad at times. I don't think this was one of Del Toro's best in terms of structure, but it's immensely enjoyable and deals with a lot of mature themes that we don't get to see in PG animated films. Although I will admit the PG rating is wild to me. This very much feels like a PG-13. I'm sure a lot of kids could handle it, but whether or not they'll enjoy it, I'm not too sure. This is also some of the most gorgeous stop-motion animation I've ever seen. I'd often forget it was stop-motion because everything was just so fluent. This movie has one big hindrance, and that being that it's a musical, whereas most of the songs aren't very good. I think avoiding music altogether would have made this a more enjoyable experience, but it is what it is. I'd still recommend Pinocchio. I think both Guillermo del Toro and animation fans will greatly admire it, and I'm giving it a thumbs up. It'll be coming to Netflix real soon, so be sure to check it out then if you haven't had the chance yet. And finally, I watched the new Steven Spielberg movie, The Fablemen, which to my understanding is a loosely adapted retelling of his childhood that is partially fictionalized. Although I suppose you could say those things about just about any biopic. The Fablemen is a film I expected to largely focus on film and the impact it had on a young Steven Spielberg, or in this case, a young Sammy Fableman. And while that definitely is a big part of it, most of the focus is on his parents and their struggles. This is a film that feels very personal to Spielberg. The portrayal of his family feels realistic to me. Families do weird things all the time, and many of us are too afraid to admit that our family may not be so functional. What I most admire about The Fablemans is the way that Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner succeed at writing characters that are flawed, but never outright bad people. With the exception of maybe one particular bully, but other than that, it's a very human film in that regard. I do wish there was a bit more to the movie, as I wanted to learn more about Spielberg's rise to success, but I also understand that wasn't really the point of the film either. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and I would definitely give it a thumbs up. So that does it for this month. One more of these to go, and I'll be able to wrap things up for 2022. I hope to never have to do another one of these videos again after that, because this has been torture. I wish you all a happy holidays. I'll see you in the new year. Bye.